All right, let's get started. Welcome everybody to Tuesday night. Looks like it's a full house. Let's go ahead and start with the roll call.
Mayor Bagley.
Here.
Council members Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Martin. Here. Peck. Rodriguez. Here. Waters. Here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, great. Let's go ahead and start with pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we go on to public invited to be heard, last week we suspended last week's meeting, and so let's pick it up where we were.
If you'll remember, the consultant wasn't available.
Oh, that's right. That's
that
right.
on
That's
a future
right.
agenda.
Okay. All right. If he's not here, then we will forego that. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to public invited to be heard. I've got a list here. Tonight, where is my? All right. Tonight is a regular session meeting, so we will have first call public invited to be heard. If your name is not on this list as of right now, you can't talk, but you can stick around and have your 3 minutes at the end. So you've got 3 minutes at the podium, and no matter how much we love or hate what you're saying, we'll let you have your 3 minutes, and then we're going to have to cut you off. So let's go ahead and start with Ellen Wilkin. As you approach the podium, if you could say your name and address for the record, and we'll go from there.
Ellen Wilkin, 3926 Hawthorne Circle. Mayor Bagley and members of City Council, thank you. I've been riding a bicycle in Colorado for 24 years and on Longmont city streets for 12, and I have seen the city of Longmont improve its bicycle facilities continually. It is a joy to ride here. To help continue the trend, I think the city should remove section 1412, subsection 10, letter D of the city's model traffic code, which requires that a cyclist dismount before entering a crosswalk. The dismount code doesn't make sense. According to section 13.5 of the Colorado State Driver's License Handbook, bicycles are a legitimate form of transportation and are considered vehicles under state law. Asking a cyclist to dismount in the crosswalk, then, is like asking a driver to get out and push their car through each traffic intersection. It is a ridiculous notion. The dismount code is confusing in the way that it is implemented by the courts and the police. My understanding is that the Longmont Police Department and the city courts interpret the word dismount as it applies to cyclists to mean stopping and putting one's foot down on the pavement before proceeding, once it is clear. But we can only address the code as written because that is the way we know it can be applied. This code does not make intersections safer for cyclists. I personally have never been hit by a car while on a bicycle, and I feel very lucky. However, the closest I have come on a regular basis is while stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the pedestrian light. This happened just a week ago, in fact, when I was waiting to cross southbound on Airport Road at the Nelson Road intersection. And yes, my foot was on the ground. A car on my left was waiting to turn right. When the walk sign turned on, I began to ride through the crosswalk. The driver also began to move. I stopped, and then the driver stopped, probably because she saw me move. She then waved me on, and only then did I go. Neither dismounting nor stopping and putting your foot down on the ground before entering the intersection helps in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, James Kenworthy.
James Kenworthy, 107 Caribou Place. I lived here for about 35 years, for whatever that means. I'm really glad to be here. I got this big lump in my chest. I'm going to share it with you. On October 8th, 2018, the International Policy on Climate Change issued a report that we have 12 years to avoid the final consequences of climate change. We now have 11 years and 3 months until we reach the point of no return. Tick-tock. There's no room for complacency, none. Canary in the coal mine, experts warn of climate change point as scientists find permafrost thawing 7 years ahead of schedule. I don't know whose schedule they're talking about. With climate crisis fueling storms and floods, historic delay in planting season threatens U.S. farmers and food prices. Nebraska, Iowa, and Ohio. I heard a news report of maybe 3 weeks ago, this farmer from Ohio saying that his corn was planted late at 6 inches tall, and at that time of the year, it's about 5 feet tall. I'm not going to talk about the fires. Scientists at the agency National Center for Environmental Information found that global and ocean surface temperature, I'll cut it, the hottest June since 1880. 3 weather-related disasters hit the Earth last month, according to the June 2019 catastrophe report from insurance broker Aon. A severe weather outbreak in Europe, $1.1 billion in damage. Flooding in China, did I say million? Billion. Flooding in China, 9 billion. Drought in India, 1.75 billion. In addition, severe weather outbreaks in the U.S. in late May and mid-March accumulated more than $1 billion in losses by the end of June, bringing in the 2019 tally of billion-dollar weather disasters to 14. Experts warn that as human behavior continued to warm the planet, extreme weather events would become more intense. If we wish to spare people in the United States and around the world the mortal dangers of extreme and relentless heat, we have to do something. 2 billion people affected by natural disasters in the last 10 years, according to the Red Cross World Disaster Report.
Sorry, Mr. Kenworthy. We get your point, though.
Shit.
Thank you. Hey, it's all good. We're on a 7-8 second delay. It's good. Thanks, Jim. All right, Lynette McLean.
Hi, I'm Lynette McLean, and I'm at 969 Reynolds Farm Lane. Thank you for listening to us go on about climate change. I'd just like to ask everybody who's here supporting the climate resolution to please stand up. Thank you. Thank you to everybody for coming. We had a little rally outside this evening, and it was a lot of fun. But I want to just thank you for inviting us to have a work session August 9th. I really appreciate that. It'll really be really great to be able to talk to you about that. And I'll just summarize, the world is nowhere near meeting the internationally agreed goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. The last 5 years were the hottest ever recorded. This June was the hottest ever recorded here. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has made clear that global emissions must be cut by 45% by 2030 to set us on the right track. And climate scientists have spoken with one voice. We must listen and we must act. We need to bring our electricity, our transport and heating systems into the 21st century. We need to dramatically increase renewable power, ensure that communities reap the rewards by creating thousands of new, decent, secure jobs for workers in clean industries. We need to climate-proof our homes, factories, and offices, making them warm in the winter and cool in the summer, which will cut carbon and our bills. We need to protect, nurture, and enhance our land and oceans so they can absorb greenhouse gases and allow a wide range of plants and animals to thrive. We need to maintain healthy and sustainable food production, resilient in the face of changing climate. And we need to consume less in order to cut our global carbon footprint. Acting locally, we have to impact globally, and that's why we need to support and properly fund local authorities and communities to deliver the transformation on the scale that's required. Any plans to suck carbon dioxide out of the air should be based on what we know works. Reforestation, improving soil carbon storage capacity, and habitat restoration, including peatland. Cross-economy joined-up strategy is required, and these actions need to be underpinned by a legislative framework requiring delivery of net zero greenhouse gas emissions that significantly sooner than 2045, including emissions that connect emissions connected to things we consume like food, which have a global footprint throughout our supply chain. I just wanted to say, too, that 716 cities, this was a couple weeks old, so we may be more, have now passed climate resolutions. Boulder's talking about it for the second time tonight, and there's 7,000 colleges who have passed climate resolutions. So we want to be in with the in crowd, and so I appreciate you looking at it. We need to halt new coal and oil, gas exploration and development, including banning fracking, and we need to stop subsidizing our oil and gas production. So thank you for
ma'am.
having me.
All right. I'm not sure how you pronounce this. Karen Dyke, taking a stab in the dark here.
Always funny. Karen Dyke, 708 Hayden Court, Mr. Mayor and council members. Tonight, I'm sharing an excerpt from The Hieroglyphic Stairway, a poem by Drew Dillinger. What did you do once you knew? It is 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something. When the seasons started failing, surely you did something. As the mammals, reptiles, and birds were all dying, surely you did something. Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? So tonight I'm here to tell you that we all know, and it's time to act boldly, to declare a climate emergency, and to put immediate actions into place. Longmont has been seen as a leader in renewable energy, and let's be a leader again and call for action to eliminate fossil fuels before it's too late. My great-great-grandchildren are counting on you. Thank you.
All right, Paul Flanders.
Paul Flanders, 924 2nd Avenue. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm a court-appointed special advocate, a CASA, from Voices for Children. And Abram Sanders addressed the council several months ago, and I'm here to give an update. I am the coordinator for CASA in the community, and we have several goals. We'd like to increase public awareness of what CASA stands for. It's a poor acronym because people think it's a housing program or a Latino-oriented program. It's not. We're court-appointed special advocates, and we advocate for children who have been abused or neglected in the court system. We are one-on-one with the child. We provide the eyes and ears for the child to proceed through the court system. We mentor, we do figure out what services can be provided. I'm also here to recruit people to our ranks. In terms of statistics, there were 5,762 reports of child abuse neglect last year, about half of which were substantiated. There were 290 kids in foster care, out of home placement, due to this problem, an estimated 350 kids with a need for an advocate. And the Voices for Children served 243 kids, about 2/3. The goal of the magistrate set a year and a half ago for 3 years hence is for every child who needs a CASA to have one. So we need to help ask people to join our ranks. If you'd like to become a voice for children, it meets the first Thursday of every month. There's an orientation at the Voices for Children office in Gun Barrel. We also like to solicit funds. We're happy that the City Council has been able to provide some funds for Voices for Children. We also like to extend an outreach to other service clubs, different leaders of the of the Longmont, if they'd like a program that either I or other members of the CASA in the community can provide, we would be happy to do that. We currently have 230 volunteers active and assigned on cases and 283 total volunteers. At this time a year ago, we had 213 volunteers. And we expect to add 35 to 40 before the end of the calendar year. We're rapidly approaching our goal, and with your help and the help of the community, we can help more and more of these children. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michael Belmont. And unfortunately, there's a new rule, there's no singing.
Sorry, it's grandfathered in for me.
I'm just kidding.
Michael Belmont, jongleur of Longmont, 841 Tenacity Drive. I'll have to wait, though the sky's turning light brown, and the Arctic ice is receding by the mile. I don't have time right now, but put my name down and call me in a little while. I'll have to wait, though the mercury is rising and the great green forests disappearing by the mile. I just can't stop or I'd be compromising, but call me in a little while. Work is really pressing, and I'm putting my kids through private school. The building program at the church has me running like a fool. We just moved to a larger house, and on and on and on. I joined today, but gotta mow my lawn. I would have to wait, though the forest fires are raging, and the weatherman says mega storms are on the rise. My neighbor's new addition is upstaging me, and so I've got to supersize. I'll have to wait, though the sky is turning dark brown and the Arctic ice is receding by the mile. I don't have time right now, but put my name down and call me in a little while. Just call me in a little while. On second thought, don't call me, I'll call you in a little while. I composed that song 15 years ago when climate disruption was well underway. And it seems unconscionable to me that any government body that is sworn to protect its citizens would not view this as an absolute emergency today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Michael. Strider Benston. By the way, you're allowed to clap for musical performances.
Yeah.
Not for the political statement,
Cool.
but for the artistic and musical
Yeah.
genius of Michael Belmont. Okay.
Strider Benston, 951 17th. Greetings, Mayor, Council. Some of you might notice I'm not in Detroit right now. I was selected a delegate to the NAACP National Convention, but problems came up and I couldn't get there. However, today, for the first time in their 110-year history, they voted a resolution that the person in Washington who should be unnamed should be impeached. First time in 110 years they passed such a resolution today. 1992, the Rio Conference, people of the world rose up and tried to begin dealing with climate change. The United States has been holding backwards the whole world to keep burning down all the forests and everything. Just this year, just last month, 550 USDA scientists were ordered to move to Kansas City, where they have no office, to force them all to quit or be fired. National Health Institute, the administration in Washington banned the word climate from the EPA, banned science-based research from the National Health Institute. They are structurally destroying the infrastructure of our country and destroying democracy. I quote myself a sermon I made not too long ago. I said, mankind's proclivity to do good makes democracy possible. Mankind's proclivity to do evil makes democracy necessary. And I'll close with the great Leonard Cohen. Democracy is coming to the USA. It has to. Thank you.
All right, Devin Quince? No, can't clap for that one. You have to have a full verse. Oh, we've heard them. We like your songs.
Hi, Devin Quince, 911 Venice Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, Mayor and Council members. I would like to ask you to support the changing the current crosswalk ordinance to the one staff will be presenting tonight, as it brings us in line with state and other nearby municipalities' ordinances regarding this. No other nearby municipalities show a rash of crashes using similar ordinances. While on the other hand, Longmont has had numerous crashes despite having this antiquated and inequitable ordinance.
Oh, sorry, you are not. Go ahead. I'm going to start you again. You're good to go.
And in fact, there has been at least one crash where the ordinance was followed to the letter and still resulted in the person riding being hit. Thank you for your time and willingness to look into this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. All right, Kevin Gallagher.
Good evening, I'm Kevin Gallagher. I live at 9376 Rogers Road here in Longmont. I'm here tonight in the presence of all these folks and passionate about climate to say that we live in a high-impact flood zone. And we know that when the rains come now, they come stronger and harder and do more damage. I live in a high-impact flood zone, and you're going to infill hundreds of acres behind me between me and a river, and I live in a river basin. We're concerned. That's why we keep asking for the drainage studies. That's why we keep asking for the traffic studies, because that will impact the drainage in front of our houses. I'm here tonight to ask you not to reconsider the appeal that was held legally in an open judicial forum a few weeks ago. And if you do, for Councilman Waters and Council Member Martin to recuse themselves for their admission of meeting with the developer on the day we filed our appeals. I'm not accusing them of anything, but even the appearance of having prior personal connections or professional connections with him could give you information that no one else has, and that reasonably leads me to suspect. So please recuse. One other thing is that I know that you want this bond issue for the financing of the easements that are not even in place yet in the preliminary plat, along with FAA approval. If there's any way you can separate that out and put it on the ballot in November, you're the city council, maybe you can make that happen. And then we can go back to being prior to a preliminary plat where we still have a voice and maybe get the answers we need as afforded to us in Vision Longmont and the Land Development Code. Thank you very much. Appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Shelley Bassman.
Shelley Bassman, Joe and I live at 3414 Lakeview Circle in Longmont with our 14-year-old dog and 3
Ms. Bassman, can you really get up there close to the mic so we can all hear what you have to say?
We've got a 14-year-old dog and 3 goldfish. So decades ago, I learned a song. I don't sing very well. And I think it was from Pete Seeger. It was prophetic then, but now it is descriptive. And I'm going to share some of the lyrics with 2 corrections or updates. And it goes, old age is golden, so it's been said, but sometimes I wonder as I crawl into bed, my ears in the drawer, my teeth in a cup, my eyes on the table until I wake up. And as sleep dims my vision, I say to myself, is there anything else I should lay on the shelf? But though climate is warming, getting hotter and hotter, and Trump is vexed, we'll still stick around and see what happens next. And one thing Joe and I would both dearly love to see happen next is for our local government to say right out loud, officially, climate change is a crisis. And we can do things at the local level because the national level is doing nothing. At the local level, we can educate ourselves. And to that end, I know of a good book. It's called The Uninhabitable Earth. It's by David Wallace-Wells, The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming. I grew up with told the MO that if you have to make a decision, action, that you look at all the options and you decide, you research them and find out what's the worst thing that could happen for whatever you're deciding. And if you can live with that, go ahead and make that decision. And if not, it's a good thing to look at. And David's book is eye-opening. We could also have, just some ideas. In our utility bill, there's, we could have a little short section about what Longmont, or educating ourselves about Longmont, or about climate change. And then the other thing I'd really dearly love is for an Earth flag to fly at city buildings. It could be under the Colorado flag. It could have its own, and Joe and I would be happy to supply the city. Joe and I would be very happy to supply the city with some flags, and we don't need new poles because they can go under the Colorado flag.
Thank you, Ms. Bassman. All right, Harry Lewis.
Harry Lewis, 302 Bellevue Court. Mayor Bagley and council members, I'm here to request the council to decline the proposal for the climate crisis proclamation. Mainly because I believe it's a politically charged topic, and as I read the rules about proclamations, I don't believe that, I think it says right in there very clearly that proclamations are not allowed that take sides in a politically charged topic. So I am not against the things that people want to do. As we've seen here tonight, climate change seems to have caused a lot of fear in people, romanticization in people. We've heard songs and poems. We've heard about people that I won't mention that have been mentioned politically. But generally, I just think it's a politically charged topic. I don't think the city should have a proclamation. When there is a city proclamation, it presumes to speak on behalf of the majority of the citizens, which I don't know that you can necessarily, unless you put it up for a vote or something, know that you've done that. Also, once you have these proclamations, you've already heard it cited that, well, there's X number of cities that have already done this, so let's jump on the bandwagon. That starts to fuel an agenda, if you will. And, I think that science endeavors to characterize the climate change science. Society translate these findings into actionable items. I think there's been a great deal of climate-related policy, economic instruments, climate action. It's all taken place in a very rational framework. I think it's already been cited that Longmont is viewed as a leader in environmental and climate-related concerns. So there's no reason why we can't keep moving ahead rationally, but I am against the notion of a climate crisis proclamation.
Thank you, sir. All right, Harry Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry, Harry Lewis, you did a great job. Rick Fitzgerald.
Mary couldn't make it, so I'm here to speak for him. My name is Rick Fitzgerald at 419 Emery Street, Mayor and Council. I'm here to say I think that the City Council should get a pay raise. I know that's unpopular with some people, but I understand that you make about $1,000 a month. Now, if you make $1,000 a month, that's what, $250 a week? And I think if you're going to do a decent job at what you're doing, you're going to have to spend at least 20 hours a week, keeping up with all the issues that you have to keep up with just to feel like you're competent. Another 5, I figure, roughly, for formal meetings. That's 25 hours a week. You do the math, you're making like $10 an hour. I think that's not very much. I think that most people on council do it because they feel like they are giving back to a community, they love a community, and that's good. I think it's really wonderful. But there's a lot of people, and they can afford to do it because they have either you have accumulated sufficient wealth or you're making decent money anyway that you can afford to do it. But a lot of the people in Longmont, I'd estimate at least 1/2 can't afford to be on council. And that's undemocratic. They have to pay their bills and they can't be part of council to do that. And you guys are making big decisions on important things. Tonight, climate change is a hugely important thing you have to be informed about. I've spent a lot of time, as I'm sure you have, thinking and worrying about these sorts of things. This is a huge issue, and to be paid so little is disingenuous of a community that prides itself in facing reality. So anyway, I hope we can get you paid more, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, James Wilson.
Bad. I should have brought my didgeridoo as well. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That.
Is it
It's
not
okay.
Willianis?
James Williams.
Williams. Okay, that's what I thought.
Hi.
Oh, ready?
9249 Rogers Road. I'm one of the 2 appellants of the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the Mountain Brook plat. Due to the short notice about the meeting, I can't stay until about 11:45 tonight. I could not find childcare for my son, so I'm going to have to go. But I'm here now, and I hope that you will consider this as part of your Mountain Brook discussion tonight. 2 weeks ago, I stood here and pointed out how the Commission's approval was in error because the Mountain Brook plan is clearly inconsistent with 2 of your own review criteria. Incompatible with surrounding properties, and there are no clear data indicating it will not adversely impact surrounding properties on Rogers Road. I want to thank Mayor Bagley, Mayor Pro Tem Christensen, and Councilors Rodriguez and Peck for listening to us that night and all of the other neighbors who showed up and sending the plat back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. There are far too many unknowns with this, and I ask that you, and I'll clarify this in a moment, but please do not vote to reconsider tonight. Hold this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission and add the right elements to this so that we get some clarity and some understanding of what is actually going to happen to our neighborhood. 2 weeks ago, Councilmember Martin, on another issue, you used the term layperson in reference to yourself, and you asked for clearer information so it'd be easier to understand because you and the other council members are lay people, is what you said. There's no better term to describe the neighbors on Rogers Road than lay people. And yet we are expected to understand the complexities of the development proposal layered on top of a confusing zoning process, which conflicted with your own comp plan. We are supposed to be able to dig out information from different places on your website or to know what to request from various city staff that we've never met or seen. How does that square for lay people? The city's engagement with Rogers Road neighbors has been anemic, not something that you should be proud of as elected officials representing the city of Longmont. You want to know why people are now just showing up about this? Because none of us had an inkling about what is now in front of us or what may be to come. There was no real community engagement. I'm asking you to pause and do some real community engagement with the neighbors on Rogers Road. It's easy enough. Reach out to us. We would love meetings with the developers, meetings with the city staff, so that we can get some answers about what is really going to occur to all of the neighbors on Rogers Road. Most of my neighbors received the notice about tonight's city council reconsideration yesterday. That is reflective of the process. So I ask you to send the Mountain Brook preliminary plat back to Planning and Zoning Commission. Tell them to require third-party studies of traffic and surface and groundwater. Tell them to reduce the road connections to Rogers Road and engage meaningfully with those who care most about the Rogers Road neighborhood, us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Jeff Thompson.
Jeff Thompson, 1616 Sumner Street. On the subject of the Mountain Brook motion to reconsider, appeals from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the City Council are governed by LMC 1502040K. A motion to reconsider the City Council's action on an appeal is barred by paragraph 12A of that section of the Municipal Code. Paragraph 12A of our municipal code says, the city council's action on the appeal shall be final. The city council's action on July 9th, I believe it was final, according to our city code. And what we have here is another case of Eugene May saying that we can disregard the city code, we can disregard the city charter, and the city council can do whatever it wants. But the city council is barred from acting on a motion to reconsider. The action that you took July 9th was final. City Attorney Eugene May participated in the preparation of the City Council communication on a motion to reconsider the City Council's action on the Mountain Brook appeal. It appears he chose to deliberately leave out the controlling section of our city code on this matter in order to influence the City Council by deception. If the City Council finds that Mr. May's omission was deliberate and intended to deceive the City Council, the appropriate course of action for the City Council to take at this time may be to refer this matter to the District Attorney for Boulder County for his investigation and determination as to whether Mr. May committed a crime known as attempt to influence a public servant. That crime is defined in the Colorado Criminal Code as follows. Any person who attempts to influence any public servant by means of its deceit with the intent to thereby alter or affect the public servant's decision, vote, opinion, or action concerning the matter, which is to be considered or performed by him or the agency or body of which he is a member, commits a Class 4 felony. This has been going on way too long in Longmont. And I would just tell everybody here that anybody that votes to reconsider the final action of the City Council on July 9th deserves to be considered to be corrupt.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I'm sorry, I realize I'm... All right, I'll address that after. All right, Kevin Ginsburg.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Ginsburg, and I live at 9283 Rogers Road. I'm not going to stand up here and sing you a song or blot out some legal code numbers that I don't know anything about. But I will tell you that I have not heard an update on any changes that have occurred from 2 weeks ago in regards to the traffic or the water problems or any of the steps to address our neighbors' concerns. It looks like there are a lot of folks on this side of the room behind me that care about this town and the future. As an invested member of this community, I hope the future includes some more like-minded people on your side of the room. It does not appear myself or my neighbors' voices have been heard, and I would rather have been told that the meeting was just a courtesy to tell us what you plan on doing and not engage us. It's 2019, and as you know, this town has changed tremendously, and I hope to see the change not just on the external, but on the internal side of this town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, Christy Ginsburg. Mr. Ginsburg, is your wife here?
No, she is working air traffic control tonight.
We'll keep it safe. Thank you. All right, Matt Hill. All right, Mark Solomon.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Mark Solomon. My address is a 26-foot Penske truck that's sitting in a friend's driveway. Just drove into town about an hour ago. So my whole family's here. We're moving. My now former house in Kansas City is across the street from a proposed development, 100-acre development, which right now is a cow pasture. And I've been on the other side of the discussions that we've had here over the past few months as a citizen whose house is across the street from a big development. I moved my family here to house homeless veterans. Longmont is on the cutting edge of an opportunity to set the stage for how we take care of our veterans. I've had the opportunity to work with the developer and the city staff on this issue. Just because the developer has a good idea doesn't mean that the city will rubber stamp it. The project must still meet all code requirements, and the hardworking people who work at the city look at water issues all day. They have to approve. The hardworking people who work at the city must also approve the traffic plan. They do this every day. They look at these studies every day and decide whether or not they meet the requirements. I want to thank the citizens that live near the development for their passion. I want to thank the developer for allowing us, Veterans Community Project, the opportunity to house homeless veterans. I'd like to thank the city staff for their tireless work to try to balance development with the needs of the citizens. Finally, I'd like to, in advance, thank the council for allowing the development to move forward. And I did it in less than 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. You did it in less than 2. The chair thanks you. All right, Kevin Mulshine.
Hello, Mayor, City Council, Kevin Mulshine, 5139 Old Ranch Drive, Longmont, Colorado. I'm here to speak also on the Mountain Brook issue, and I just wanted to clear up some misconceptions. First, on as far as information, because this kind of personally offends me, is one of the applicants is no longer here. We have a number of unanswered emails into offering to sit down and discuss the issue with him. We've also, the other appellant, we offered, he was very gracious, but he didn't want to meet with us without staff being there. But let me just clear up a couple of facts. First of all, when it said there's no traffic study, in fact, there have been 6. We've met with staff. The original traffic study was submitted, reviewed by staff, revised, updated, resubmitted 3 times based upon assumptions staff wanted to incorporate. Our initial traffic study was actually presented to this council for 20 minutes on February 13, 2018. This was all considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've had 6 traffic studies. The ironic thing about the presentation 2 weeks ago was that when we were accused of not having a traffic study, the appellant's presentation actually used a slide from one of our traffic studies, which was amazing. Now, we just got to get one thing clear as far as miscommunication. We're doing a lot. We've been required, we have to build 2 collector roads at a cost of $6 million before we can build a house. We have to also connect 2 southern entrances, one on Dry Creek going south and one on Anderson before we get to build a house. That miscommunication is something that's been lost, but it's very simple, and frankly, the Planning and Zoning Council understood it when they voted 7-0 on it. We also just have to comment on one thing. There was a couple of accusations that the city is taking a 70-foot right-of-way. That right-of-way was taken by the county in 1963. 1963. It doesn't come within 30 feet of either appellant's house, not 5 feet. It doesn't come within 30 feet. Everybody who bought a house there received a deed that says, and we have it on record, they recognize that they don't own that right-of-way. It was given to the county in 1963. So I just wanted to clear up those facts. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, just a quick, not normal, but the chair, the mayor, whoever you want to call me, Brian. Eugene, if I'm correct, everything we're hearing on the Mountain Brook, regardless of whether it's Mr. Mulshine or Mr. Williams or Mr. Gallagher, it's not a public hearing. We are not legally permitted to take any of this into account. So, am I wrong, Eugene?
Mayor Eugene May, City Attorney, you are correct. I was going to give that admonition if a motion to reconsider was successful. You would be making decisions only on evidence presented at the hearing.
Right, okay. So we'll continue, but if I'm looking uncomfortable, as if I'm trying not to pay attention, that's why. All right, let's go. Jake Spencer. Let's hope you have a career lined up that doesn't include handwriting.
Mayor, City Council, Jake Spencer, 700 Ken Pratt Boulevard, Suite 113 here in Longmont. I just wanted to also clarify a couple misconceptions that have been said about the Mountain Brook proposal. One of the complaints has been about floodplain and drainage. I just wanted to confirm that no part of the Mountain Brook subdivision is within a floodplain. Also, a drainage study has been submitted as part of the annexation process and was resubmitted and updated 4 more times in response to staff's comments, and this was just at annexation. A drainage study was then resubmitted at time of preliminary plat, and that has gone through 2 reviews. Staff, in an abundance of caution and concern for the downstream owners, asked us to, in addition to what's required by the code, complete a basin-wide drainage study that incorporated 350 acres from Nelson Road to Rogers Road and Hover to Airport. This study has cost us over $100,000 and has been revised and reviewed several times since October 2018, and it happens to also match the results of another study done on the same basin at the same time by a different engineer. There's also been claims that we will be flooding down downstream owners, and I would also like to make a point that property owners are legally allowed to discharge stormwater runoff at the rate it leaves the development in its current state, farmland. Mountain Brook stormwater ponds will not only meet this requirement, but in addition, we will be reducing the runoff rate by 40%. This should do nothing but help the downstream owners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jake. And you can work on your handwriting. It's not something to go home disappointed about. John Michael Hinson? All right. Donald Hinson.
My name is Don Henson, 700 Ken Pratt Boulevard. Very briefly, I think you saw in the presentation in the appeal about it not being compatible, Mountain Brook not being compatible with surrounding neighbors. Quite frankly, I think that was a very artful land plan. 9 homes north of Rogers Road. We matched that with 9 homes south of Rogers Road. I believe it is indeed compatible. And there was a slide in the presentation at the appeal that showed townhomes with private driveways on Rogers Road. That was a Photoshop slide. At no time from annexation referral to annexation has anything but single-family homes ever been proposed along Rogers Road. And it's very disappointing when we see slides like that, because that has never been the proposal. There is nothing ever that has shown that. And I would just like to kind of sum up the project, if I may, by saying we're very proud of the Mountain Brook plan that we put forward. We challenge anyone to point to another project to provide so much public benefit, all paid for by the project. From the 5 to 6 million in the city's collector road system, Dry Creek, Fordham, Anderson, and what will shortly become a major reliever to Nelson, Mountain Brook Drive. That's all project costs. To the buffered bike lanes along Mountain Brook Drive in Fordham, to the dedication and construction of 2 new greenways. But that's just infrastructure. In addition to that, workforce housing. I know there are a lot of people who have $1 million homes. Well, there are a lot of workforce people that can't afford $1 million homes. We want to provide those guys a home too, and Mountain Brook, I think, is the place to do that. That's where you said in your Envision Longmont, the #1 place you wanted to develop was the Hover Street corridor. That's what we're doing. In addition to that, we're providing homes for Habitat for Humanity and for homeless veterans. I am excited about this project, quite frankly, because it's very unique and that we can do so many good things for so many people with this project. That doesn't come along every day. The stars have to align. And so I would just encourage your consideration. And to the neighbors, we look forward to you riding on the bike lanes down Fordham to Mountain Brook and accessing the bikeways. We look forward to the neighbors from Rogers Road using the greenways. With that kind of infrastructure we're putting in and that kind of amenities, there's no need to do anything to Rogers Road. They will have access to bike lanes, greenways, a brand-new collector road to go east and west and wherever they need to go. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right. Gonna slaughter this one. Is it Dale Landon? Oh, Dale.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dale Lannon, 1018 Ponderosa Circle, Longmont. And I'm for calling for a climate crisis here. Our city can do this. We really have a situation which is going to affect the future of our city and the life on the planet. The Earth has a hardening shell against infrared release to space, and it's not relinquishing our use of fossil fuel, including developments and housing and the vehicles we drive, including electric bikes. It takes something to make them and to create the electricity. We have a real situation, and we could prioritize bicycles and bike lanes and not take 5 years to get it so people can cross Main Street after there's a flood or something. I cracked up on a railroad track. The railroads were given the land to plat out to build the town. And we should know that we can speak up and change things. I mean, this is actual physics. The Earth is heating. Entropy is rising, and the price of food rising is going to cause aggravation and a tendency towards violence. We have a basic dark age we're headed into. I need to get off my podium, but there are some things that we've found in the last few years. One is the clear sky effect that occurs when the amount of shakeup of the top of clouds and things keeps them from forming once the heat hits a certain threshold, about 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. And then for the longest time, the light would just come clear right on down and turns to heat. It would no longer reflect off clouds. That's a huge, huge feedback we didn't know about. There's also another one that was just discovered, the ocean carbonate balance of the where once it hits a certain threshold for the fast 5 extinctions, it just goes into a predetermined event that will last for tens of thousands of years. So I want to propose that climate crisis is not an overstatement. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I got to, at some point, that was an alarm to remind my boy to take his meds, so my apologies. All right, Elizabeth Vanderhoff? It's okay, sir. Take your meds.
Elizabeth Vanderhoof, 9017 Rogers Road. I'm here speaking on the Mountain Brook development. My concerns are for the neighborhood, the distinct rural residential atmosphere of Rogers Road. I've lived there for 33 years, 3 generations, living in my home on Rogers Road. Traffic is a main concern for us. Looking at Rogers Road today, there are cracks in it, there are bumps in it. The lines of paint need to be repainted. There's no maintenance from the city of Longmont right now. Yet, the traffic and wear and tear on Rogers Road is set to increase dramatically with this new development. 3 outlets on Rogers Road is not a good plan. How will the 2-lane residential road handle the traffic? There's no room on the north side for the road to widen Rogers Road except to take out every homeowner's front yard and noise buffering landscaping, so that leaves so if you don't do that, your only other option is that the developer pushes his boundary of the development back on the south side of the road to allow for the road widening, 20 to 30 feet into his property. Or the development can put their main exits, could be to the south on Fordham. Fordham would easily be extended through all the way through till Nelson. Also this needs to be done before any housing can go in, and I think the city of Longmont street planners should be able to come up with a better plan than to move residents in, and a better plan to move the residents in and out of this development. There's no need to disturb the rural residential character of Rogers Road. Mountain Brook Drive, the main road in the development, does not have enough outlets. Fordham needs to go through to Nelson, and there needs to be an outlet to the west for the veterans community. I challenge the city planners and traffic division to work with the developers now and to come up with a workable plan for a Rogers Road community. The road structure to support the traffic needs is to be in place before the construction starts. I think that roundabouts on Rogers Road intersections would allow to slow traffic and keep Rogers Road from being a shortcut, but rather keep it as a rural residential road. I also have some concerns with the habitat conservation study. It was not done during the time of nesting for raptors. We do have an active nest of raptors, osprey at Fordham and Rogers Road, where we had 2 fledglings in 2018 and 2019. A cone was put on top of the pole where they were nesting, and so they were not able to build their nest. They screeched for months, tried to build their nest, and it finally fell down. I think a nesting platform should be put up for these osprey. It's not mandated, but I think it's the right thing for the city and the developers to do. Also, there are at least 3 great horned owls in the area, and I think taking down all of the big trees in that area would be a disservice to the raptor community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Maya Bovino?
Hi, my name is Maya Bovino. I live in Nederland, Colorado, and I go to Niwot High School, so that's how it's relevant that I'm here tonight. I just spent a lot of time writing down notes for what I wanted to say, but I didn't quite finish that, so we're just gonna wing it. Thank you all for listening, and I'm here to ask the city of Longmont to declare a climate emergency. I'm here because I believe it is of uttermost importance that we take the opportunity to act while we still have time. The declaration and the resolution for a climate emergency that is provided by the Climate Mobilization, which you can look into online, outlines a realistic path that any city can take to become more sustainable. I think that a transformation to 100% renewable energy and an updated public transportation system is critical in this time so that we are able to transition to a more sustainable society. Going off of that, I think that one of the most important parts of this resolution is public education in climate-related issues, because although it may be politically charged, unfortunately, it's important that all citizens have the opportunity to understand the real threat that we are facing. I ask you to declare a climate emergency because I believe that your future, my future, and the future of all life on Earth should not be compromised because climate change is a politically charged issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well spoken. Okay, Robert, and by the way, the chair will only give kudos to people under the age of 18 who are, so, I mean, the rest of you guys can just be jealous. All right, is it Robert Notterman?
Yeah, that's close enough.
All right.
I'm over at 9288 Rogers Road, here to, not quite sure why I'm here, because you were saying that anything that everybody said tonight about the Mountain Brook's not going to be taken into consideration, but I'm here anyways. I've already been here, so just wanted to speak. My wife got the Sunday paper and it's showing that you guys the city may reconsider the project appeal, and I'm here to, just for what it's worth, to say I want the city council to kind of stick with their July 9th vote, to bring it back to take it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'm not opposed. My property runs about 1,500 feet next to this subdivision, so it borders about 1,500 feet. So I'm just here to speak on that behalf and not against any development. I mean, I'd be completely for. I want to thank the veterans for showing up and speaking, some of them. If they put that whole acreage in for veterans, I have no problem with it. I mean, I know you guys did great service for the country. I don't have any problems with that. If they just ran the whole thing through for veterans, I think that would be a good thing for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Leon Bartholomew.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Leon Bartholomew. I live at 988 Glen Arbor Circle, Longmont. I've been a resident of Longmont for the last 33 years. And I'm also a member of VFW Post 2601 in Longmont, and I've been a life member of the VFW since 1969. And during those 33 years, I've been active in the VFW in Longmont, and one of our major responsibilities in this community is to work hand in hand with the veterans that live in Longmont and are passing through Longmont and their families. And I've been really active in that for the last 33 years. Our post was down on the river, 206 South Main Street, where many of Longmont's homeless take up residence. And many times during every week, there'll be veterans coming from those homeless camps through our parking lot and knocking on our doors and asking for assistance. You know, some are legit and some are not, but that's not up to us to decide. We help any veteran that knocks on our door, and I'm the quartermaster for VFW Post 2601, and so I have responsibility for a fund which is called the Veterans Relief Fund. And that fund we build every year through poppy sales and donations. And we hand out thousands of dollars every year to veterans and veterans' families from Longmont and from around the country coming through Longmont who need assistance with gas, rooming, utility bills, mortgage, whatever it is. If we have the money, we help them. And it's really sad when I go out, I help with a couple programs in Longmont where we go out and distribute stuff to the homeless, especially in the wintertime. And many of these guys I've got to know over the years are veterans that pass through or live here or whatever, and they're afraid to ask for help. And everybody thinks the veteran's an old Vietnam veteran that's out there and has just got out of society, but probably 8 out of 10 veterans that I run into in Longmont are from the Gulf Wars on. And these guys don't know how to ask for help, and they're stuck in a cycle of homelessness. And the fact that the Veterans Community Project, you listened to Mark earlier, he's one of the founders of the Veterans Community Project in Kansas City, Missouri. They're going to come here and help us build this village, and you guys need to support that.
I need to cut you off. Thank you, sir. All right. That's it for first call public invited to be heard. Before we go on, I usually don't do this, but because one of our staff members I wouldn't say attacked, just it was insinuated. There's so many people here, just by way of what happened. So when we had the appeal on Mountain Brook, there was a final vote. It was 4-2. Councilmember Finley was not here. I was in the prevailing side of that. I didn't vote because I agreed. I voted because, according to Robert's Rules of Civil Procedure, as well as City Council Rules of Procedure, a person on the prevailing side at the next regular council meeting can make a motion to reconsider a motion. I called Eugene May. Eugene May didn't call me. I called Eugene May and said, I will be making a motion to reconsider because I'm a public official. I should be held accountable. I wanted that publicly noticed. Now, Mr. May, I chastise you publicly for not putting on there that the mayor said, because I would have put that on there. I wanted to make sure that the community knew that tonight I would be making that motion. I didn't want to do it behind closed doors or have the neighbors show up and say, oh my gosh, nobody told us. So yes, no, there's no notice required. I didn't have to do that. Those are the rules. And so that is what happened that brought us from there to here. Eugene May didn't commit a felony. Nobody schemed, nobody planned. Mayor Bagley, before the vote, said, oh my gosh, Councilmember Finley's not here. I've been on council since 2011. I've learned a few things. I'm going to vote in the majority so I can make a motion to reconsider and bring it up again next time when we have a full council. That is what happened. Okay? So, Mr. May, took some heat. I'm not going to turn you over to the district attorney. I want you to go home and I want you to sleep well. Okay? All right. All right, let's go ahead with the consent agenda. Ms. Quintana, can you go ahead and read that off for us?
Before we do that, Mayor, do you want to get the minutes approved?
Oh, yeah. Are there minutes to approve? Oh, yes, there are. Can I have a motion for the July 9th, 2019 regular session minutes?
So moved.
Okay. It's been moved by a bunch of people and seconded by Councilmember Peck. Let's go ahead and vote. All right, that passes unanimously with, actually, 6 voting for and Councilmember Finley not voting because she was not here. But you did watch it twice. All right, let's go on to the consent agenda.
Mayor, item 8A is ordinance 2019-40, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for August 13, 2019. 8B is ordinance 2019-41, a bill for an ordinance amending Title 11, Chapter 11.04, Section 123 of the Longmont Municipal Code regarding dismounting bicycles. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for August 13, 2019. 8C is ordinance 2019-42, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the Peakview Estates annexation, generally located at 2725 9th Avenue, Longmont, Colorado, and zoning the property RSF Residential Single Family. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for August 13, 2019. 8D is Resolution 2019-67, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the State of Colorado Judicial Department for provision of juror list. 8E is Resolution 2019-68, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the State of Colorado Department of Local Affairs for grant funding for Defense Council First Appearance Grant Program, DCFA. 8F is Resolution 2019-69, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the State of Colorado Department of Revenue for access to motor vehicles records within the Drives software system. 8G is Resolution 2019-70, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Transportation for grant funding for high-visibility impaired driving enforcement for the period of July 2019 to June 2020. 8H is Resolution 2019-71, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the U.S. Census Bureau, U.S. Department of Commerce, for a trademark license to use 2020 Census logo on promotional materials. 8I is Resolution 2019-72, a resolution of the Longmont City Council authorizing agreements between the city and Gregory P. Hertridge and Monica G. Smetana Hertridge for the acquisition of real property for the construction of a fire station. 8J is Resolution 2019-73, a resolution of the Longmont City Council authorizing agreements between the city and Sparky Trust for the acquisition of real property for the construction of a fire station. And 8K is appoint David Hornbacher, Director of Electric Utility, to the Black River Authority Board of Directors.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I move the consent agenda.
All right, Dr. Waters.
Yeah, I'd like to pull item 8C, the Peakview annexation.
All right, I assume that there's a friendly amendment that you move the consent agenda less item C, correct? All right, let's vote. That passes unanimously. All right, let's move on to ordinances on second reading and public hearings on any matter. First is 9A, Ordinance 2019-38, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the City of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport, hangar parcel H51, to LAC Storage LLC. I'm assuming there's no staff report because they've told us there isn't one. Are there any questions from council? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open the public hearing on Ordinance 2019-38. All right, seeing that no one wants to speak, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Can I have a motion, please? I'm going to move passage of 9A, Ordinance 2019-38. Do I have a second? Thank you. Let's vote. Councilmember Peck? All right. Okay. All right, Councilmember Peck. Dr. Waters, want to weigh in? Push harder. All right. That passes unanimously. 9B, Ordinance 2019-39, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the City of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport hangar parcel H34 to Dixon Aviation LLC. There is not a staff report. Any questions from council? Seeing none, let's go ahead and open the public hearing on this ordinance. Anyone want to speak? Okay, Mr. Thompson?
If this ordinance is passed tonight, is the city actually authorized to sign the lease? Can say, Harold here, go ahead and sign the lease tonight or tomorrow? Or after the ordinance is published? Or are you going to wait until after the next regular session of the city council, just in case somebody wants to reconsider this action? Perhaps there's a fickle member of the city council that will want to change their mind. And they have, I guess, according to your rules, which you say trump the city code, they can have this whole action reconsidered in 2 weeks. So I don't understand how anybody does business with the city that way unless they feel it's to their advantage to do business with a corrupt city.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. All right, anyone else wanting to speak at public invited to be heard? Or I'm sorry, public invited to be heard on the hearing on this ordinance? All right. Councilmember Finley?
I move passage of ordinance 2019-39.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. Actually, before we do that, I got something to say. I mean, it's not public invited to be heard, and that is yes, in response to that particular member person's, if one of us, if you're a member of the prevailing side of an issue at the next regular council meeting, if you would like to propose that it be reconsidered, you may make a motion. That has to be passed with a majority of 4 of us, and then we will go back to the moment in time before we passed this ordinance. So make sure if you want to do that, you vote on the prevailing side, or else you cannot. All right, let's go ahead and vote. That passes unanimously. Stay tuned next time. All right. I think we're done, but yeah, I mean, we can take a break. No, I mean, what I mean is we're not done. Yeah. If we need a break, let's take a break. So let's. How long? All right, let's just real quick. Okay, let's go ahead and move deal with item 8C. Dr. Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. In the write-up, and I would just take council members to page 60 of our materials. In the write-up, Harold, for this annexation, I think there are 7 concerns stated on page 60 of the enclosure. Among those is a bullet that is an expression of a concern, I assume, a concern from the neighbors to this annexation. The bullet says whether the project would include an affordable housing component. I saw in the materials, I saw responses to some of the other concerns. I didn't see any response directly to that concern. What was the concern, and what is the response to the concern?
So the question was, is there going to be affordable housing in this? And Don can help me. We're not really sure what the intent of it was, but was there going to be affordable housing in this? Any development that moves forward has an obligation under the inclusionary housing ordinance that the council passed to provide 12% housing, payment in lieu, or some of the other options that were in there, and that's what was indicated to the individual that asked that question. I believe in this case they're going to provide 3 lots for affordable housing to be put on that location.
So the answer to the question was yes. There's going to be an affordable housing component, A. It would satisfy the 12% requirement. Do you know, Don, we'll assume that it's not a mid-tier exception, or it is a 30 to 60%, it's going to be priced in that 30 to 60% AMI range?
Do
you know?
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Waters, I would be guessing on what they are going to do. The answers that were in the neighborhood meeting minutes said that they would provide the three lots for the affordable housing requirement. So my assumption is that they are going to meet our requirement. I just don't know at what percentages. I'm sorry. We can find out for you for the public hearing.
Well, I'll move to approve this, but I would be curious to know. Are these going to be donated to Habitat? Is this going to be, who's going to be build them? Do we have any idea what the time frame is in relationship to the overall development, when those would come on the market, what the price points are, those kinds of questions. So we have some idea of whether compliance with the ordinance actually results in inventory.
We can definitely ask, just so the council knows, oftentimes at annexation, a lot of those details have not been determined yet, and they may change through our process depending on maybe whether or not the AMI changes and what the price point they're trying to hit might drop or raise. So, but we can get you what we have. I'll make sure that Karen's ready for that.
With that, I'll move approval of, let me go back to the agenda, 29. Yeah, it's ordinance 2942.
It's been, I believe it's 8C, ordinance 2019-42. Yes. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. I don't do this often. We're in emergency recess. let's go ahead and keep going. Now we have city staff who will present a picture. No problem. You've got 10 seconds. No, just kidding. We're going to hear about branding. That's cool. Cattle branding, yes. All right, general business, 11A, City of Longmont brand identity refresh and signage wayfinding design presentations.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley,
Marika?
members of City Council. Marika Unger, Citywide Communications Manager. I want to take a moment to introduce, we have two consultants here with us this evening for branding and identity work, Guide Studio from Cleveland, Ohio, with Carrie Moradi and Carolyn Shakin, and with C+B Design on the signage and wayfinding piece. So these are two initiatives that we kicked off at the end of March, beginning of April of this year. They're both sort of keeping pace with each other, and they are very closely related. So we are working on both of them in parallel. About 1 year ago, Harold and Sandy tasked me with an evaluation and assessment of the state of our communications in the city. The results of that assessment yielded a number of key findings, 4 of them, in fact. The first one was that as I came to work for the city, despite being a 19-year resident of the city of Colorado, or city of Longmont, what I found was that the city provides amazing world-class services, and the staff are top-notch. A lot of what we do here is leading the way in not just the state, but the region, and even on the national stage. At the same time, the identity and the way that we presented ourselves was less polished and less professional than the actual state of affairs at the city of Longmont. So my first finding was that there wasn't a cohesive identity or brand that was really easily recognizable about the city for its residents and beyond. To illustrate this example, where did it go? Okay. We have a slide that illustrates this example. It's in your packets, I believe. And that's one other note I wanted to mention. We had a longer presentation prepared for tonight. We were asked to keep it short. We've given you the long version so that you can reference all of the materials. This process that we went through, both on the wayfinding and on the identity piece, is a very robust and in-depth process. I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Finley for being a part of that process with us on the steering team. Their contributions were invaluable. I also want to thank the rest of the steering team. Some of our members are here this evening, so thank you all for the work that you've put in. But I do want to emphasize that a 5-minute presentation can't do justice to the extensive nature of the process that we went through to get to that 10-second showing a picture. We interviewed, we had stakeholder groups, we did focus groups, we did workshops, we interacted with over 100 members of the city, the community, the public in general, and partner organizations. In addition to that, we're currently conducting a survey to make sure that we're validating the results of the work that we did before that. So far, we have about 700 responses to our survey, which is a really pleasing number to us. And I just wanted to say that those results are tracking very strongly with all of the work that we've done to this point. The other parts of the assessment showed that it's probably time for us to also update our website, our social media strategy, and our digital asset management around the city. All of those things are very dependent on having the brand and identity piece in place first, so that's why we started there. So without too much more ado, I want to introduce our consultants and have them present to you our findings. I also want to mention that in our work, we wanted to make sure that we capture the true spirit of Longmont, that what we came up with as a brand, which is much more than just an image. It is how we talk about ourselves, how we tell the story of our place and our people. And in all of that, we wanted to be aspirational. We wanted to respect and recognize the cultural diversity that we have here, and also the trends that we're seeing towards innovation, arts and culture, and all of the other things that you're developing as part of your council vision. So with that, thank you.
Yep, yep. All right, just want to make sure I have my finger on the arrow. My name's Carolyn Chaikin. I'm with Guide Studio, and we are a firm that specializes in branding and communications for cities and other types of civic entities. In the 21 plus years that we've been doing this work, we've worked with dozens of cities, and I can say in all honesty that Longmont is very unique, and it has been an honor to work with you, and we appreciate the opportunity. So our brand objective coming into this was to create something that is authentic to both the quality and the character of Longmont as it is today, but also representative of where you're going in the future. As Marika mentioned, we went through a pretty extensive process. The reason that we do this is because we don't believe that we're fabricating brands. We believe that brands are inherent in the place and the people. And so our job is really to unearth it and to help members of the community define it. We just put that into tools that you can use for communication around who you are and what you stand for. And that's why those workshops and focus groups are so important. And we did have a really great, diverse representation of the community in these sessions to help us build the brand strategy. So part of the brand strategy, and you have the full brand strategy in front of you, part of it, a very important element, are your distinct advantages. These are the advantages that are a unique combination of characteristics that really distinguish Longmont from other communities. We've identified 4 major themes: embracing diversity, how Longmont appreciates the cultural diversity of the community and takes measures to make it an inclusive and welcoming place for all. Boldly independent. Longmont operates more independently than other more traditional municipalities, which gives rise to some creative and effective initiatives and solutions. Shared values and shared vision. You have a very engaged community. The people here clearly care. They're welcome to participate and they get involved. And awe-inspiring, the undeniably beautiful landscape and scenery. Another key component of the brand strategy is the positioning statement. We define this as a concise internal statement that speaks to what you offer, who it's for, and the end benefit. And this serves as a foundation for brand communications, not meant to be copied and pasted onto a website, but meant to sort of guide the way. Longmont is a vibrant city with a hometown feel, a feisty personality, and magnificent views of the Rocky Mountains. Longmont's diverse community embraces shared values, including independence, sustainability, and a focus on an active and fulfilling lifestyle that drive our visionary and innovative approach. Together, we meet challenges with creativity and unconventional solutions that make the impossible possible and spur the continuous elevation of the place and the people who live, work, and visit here. Once we had our strategy in a good place, we moved on to conceptual design. We start with what we call a mood board. Whoops, sorry, that did not make it into the presentation. But these are images that give a visual flavor for the strategy and help us ensure that we're on the right track before we begin developing concepts. We developed several concepts. We narrowed down the options. We went through multiple rounds of revision until we felt that we had a logo that aligned well with the strategy and the vision. The mark that I'm going to share is an evolution of your existing mark. It's a conceptual depiction of Long's Peak. The top portion is Long's Peak, is representative of Long's Peak. Underneath Longmont, you're seeing the reflection of Long's Peak in the water. You may also see a nod to your agricultural history. This is purposefully conceptual so that people have the opportunity to see what they want to see. And the name breaks out of the seal, which is indicative of the feistiness, the independence, and the bold character of the city of Longmont. All right, missing another slide. In terms of the colors, we were looking for a color palette that would represent the arts and culture, the cultural diversity, and also be reflective of the landscape with the sunset. We actually have a really beautiful picture that one of the steering committee members took, and the color schematic matches up with what we're showing you here. These are a few applications, so you can see what it may look like once we're actually applying it to different places. But to be clear that this mark is still in development, the brand identity is still in development, so there are opportunities for us to build out that brand palette further.
Thank you, Carolyn. So lastly, we're looking at next steps. So this is the conceptual design that we have agreed to move forward with. And right now we have, as I think of it, the bulk of the work ahead of us to do. So we are going to be refining departmental treatments, talking with the different departments, seeing how we apply this across the city and what that implementation plan looks like. So Guide Studio will be helping us develop a branding guideline document that will make it very easy for staff across the city to really use this mark and all of its associated pieces in a way that's consistent and that makes it easy to identify. So we're really excited about this next phase. We recognize it's going to be a lot of work. We also want to take a really frugal approach and a sustainable approach. So we're not asking departments to throw out all of their current materials and start over from scratch. We're going to be depleting what we have, and we're asking folks to start thinking about when they need to replace or reorder materials to then do so with the new mark in place. We'll also be looking for additional implementation recommendations, both from Guide and from partners and internally. So with that, I will turn it over to Kristen Seifer from C+B Design to give us a little bit of information about where she is with her signage and wayfinding plan.
Hi, I'm Kristen Seifer, and I am with C+B Design, and we are working on signage and wayfinding for Longmont. So I have a very quick presentation. The nice thing about following the Guide Studio presentation about brand, one of the things that we do with signage is we communicate a story, and the brand is a wonderful way for us to deepen that story connection through elements in the physical environment. Signage is in the physical environment, so it is one of the first things that people will intersect with when they come into town. And so how you tell your story and how you have that signage direct people to important amenities and destinations in Longmont is the goal of signage and wayfinding. I'm a bit of a Luddite, so let's mix. Oh, it works beautifully. Okay, so we are piggybacking on the Guide Studio work. We basically started at the same time. So while they were working to develop the Guide Studio ideas around brand, we were out in the community looking for how we can make the signage reinforce a sense of place. You may or may not know this, but signage has a lot of different user groups that it has to respond to. There are auto drivers, visitors, trail users, historic and placemaking type of information pieces. It is a broad brush, so it involves a lot of little elements as well as some larger gateway elements that would introduce people to the community. Examples of signage from other places, if you don't know what signs are. I'm always looking at signs and I'm always surprised when people don't. But so gateways really introduction to a community. We also have signage that will have mapping that shows walking destinations as well as community level, downtown level. The maps are very dependent on where they are located, but typically maps are for pedestrians or bicyclists, people who are on their feet or on their bike looking for places to go. And then the trail signage is really important too. So here in Colorado, we have a lot of really beautiful trail systems. This one is one I did for the Mary Carter Greenway Trail in Littleton, Colorado. When we look at trail signage, we do two things. We want to have people feel secure when they're on the trail. We want to reduce barriers for use. One of those barriers is, I don't really know where I am, and I don't know how far this will take me. I also don't know if there will be any things like steep grades or obstacles that I should be concerned about if I am a user who is perhaps less physically fit. And then the other thing is, how do we connect trails to things like walking destinations, such as downtowns, pedestrian districts. Beyond the historic downtown in Longmont, you have a number of pedestrian districts where we do expect people to walk. We do expect people to intersect with things like maps. So even if you think about Prospect, the community of Prospect has a little downtown as part of it. That is included in our signage program too. And then storytelling is another important piece that we can do physically in the environment. This is an example of a historic photo on the street and in Littleton. And this really shows the historic connection between exactly where this sign is and this moment in history where people were hula hooping in this location on the street. So the more we can daylight that history as part of the signage when people are walking, the more we can connect to some of those things that are sometimes hard to find otherwise, are a little bit invisible. So signage, one of the goals of it is to make the invisible visible. And then this idea of a palette too. One of the things that's, again, so helpful that you are going through a branding exercise concurrent with the signage is that we can reinforce the brand through color, through imagery, through even the shape of the signs, so that there's a transparent awareness of the community sense of place across all those signs. So two big goals for signage is just reinforce a visual identity, really talk about the brand, and then the functional piece of signage is to help orient folks. So that's really where we're coming from, is orientation and storytelling. And it's very soup to nuts, so everything from even street signs we'll be looking at to redo. One of the things that we found when we were reaching out to stakeholders is there's some lack of auto-reflectivity in some of the street signs, so being able to see those at night is really important too. And then for our deliverables, we will have the final signage design as well as the location of all the signs. We'll phase the implementation. So we have some money, year one, from the DDA and Visit Longmont to install the first round of signs. The nice thing about signage is its transportation enhancement grants are very available when it comes to funding signs. So one of the things we really like to do is take money and double it, ideally, through additional grant monies. So part of the final package is also a roadmap for how you can begin to take advantage of those Colorado-specific and those nationwide-specific grants and their cycles so that you can help fund it over, ideally, 2 or 3 year phasing. So where we've been is we outreach to the community first with the Engage Longmont site, which is a really wonderful thing that came on as our project came on. Through that, we've had community surveys. We have one more community survey to do for preliminary designs. But we also know that in addition to these workshops and formal events, it's really important to get out into the community because sign users are so varied. So we had a number of events where we had informational booths. First, just talking about, this is at the farmers market, getting perceptions of best practices, what people really preferred for signage. The nice thing about these is that there's no barrier. Many children also participated in this event. Also, a lot of people who were English second language or monolingual were able to participate in these events. They didn't come to, when I have these booths, I always say, nobody comes to public meetings. And it's hard, it's really hard with our schedules to get to a public meeting. So meeting people where they were, and then moving into preliminary design, and then again, taking that back into the community. So here are the 3 preliminary design options. Once we took those out into the community at things like the concert series and Pride and Rhythm on the River just a couple weeks back, you can see all the dots and the sticker notes that we started to get on here. So where we are right now is actually combining the information that we receive from the community surveys, the community meetings, and these community outreach events, getting a community picture of preferences for signs, and then we're also combining that back with the work that Guide Studio has done so that our final design can also be reflective of the brand. So preliminary to final design is where we're going, the next steps. We're going to integrate all that feedback, get stakeholder group review and direction, complete the messaging plan, and then be back here in August and September to present the final signage palette and the locations and the budgets. So that's kind of our snapshot. I hope that, yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And we're happy to take questions on any of the above.
Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. Let me start with the wayfinding. Just one question. I assume there are ADA issues that have to be addressed with a wayfinding and signage initiative. What are they, and how are we responding?
So there are several ADA things to consider when you're dealing with signage and wayfinding. The first is what we call MUTCD standards. They are the standards that are employed by highway signs like CDOT signs. So that's text height, that's spacing. In addition to that, when we get to pedestrian types of signs, we have to deal with things like overhangs, making sure that information is accessible at all levels. So if I'm a standing person and I'm looking at a map, I can read it. If I'm a person in a wheelchair or a small person, I can read it. Basically, we are looking for things that don't trip people up. One of the things that we haven't decided on, but I have done in other municipalities, is also putting Braille on the signage. So if we would like to have some Braille, there's a certain height that needs to be located so that someone who is visually impaired knows where to find it. But in short, yes, we're absolutely looking at ADA. It is a little bit nuanced in regard to types of signage and what is involved, and some of that is dependent on direction that we receive from the community. So for example, the Littleton signs that I showed, there is a really big Center for the Blind in Littleton. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a tremendous opportunity. I went to them, talked to them about, the signage project, this desire to really do something innovative in regard to how we're addressing visually impaired folks. And they said, no. But the goal for them is to actually teach people across the country who have sight limitations how to deal with an environment that often doesn't support what they need. So they rejected me, and that does happen. But in other instances, we have put Braille, and we have also put this idea of you pass by a sign, and if you are a person who has limited sight, often they have a device on their phone that pings them for information that is available. So if we were to Wi-Fi enable some of those pedestrian signs, we could have that piece, even associated with an electronic messaging sign. Often those can be scaled. So if you are looking at it at one scale, you can make it a lot larger and see that information more clearly.
And it's safe to assume that how much of that kind of technology is embedded in this initiative would depend on what we do with budgets, I assume.
Yes, although you do have one of the nation's most foremost electronic messaging signage folks here in Longmont, coincidentally. So there is a bit of a cost savings there just in transport, which can sometimes be expensive if we do not specify locally sourced materials, which includes electronic pieces too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can I follow up with at least one question?
You may.
So, Mike, I want you to know I think branding is an important function and a potential real asset used effectively. I did get a question. We've read some in the local media about, what's a good use of money and et cetera, et cetera. I did get one question directly, and that is, what's the ROI for a $30,000 investment or a $2 investment in rebranding or updating a brand? And I responded, I'm just curious what your response would be and how closely it matches mine. Or one of your consultants, whoever you're comfortable.
Well, different communities have different objectives for their brand. Brand is never a one-stop solution for any issue that a city is having. We find it to be a component of a broader strategy. So at the end of the day, if the goal is around economic development, attracting new business, those are the types of initiatives that you may measure it against. When we drill it down to implementation, that's where we can find some more direct correlation between the brand and its efficacy. So for example, if you're developing a new website and you want to measure the traffic, how long people are spending on your site, which pages they're navigating to, that type of information can reflect how the brand is working. Same with social media and any other types of particularly digital initiatives. But long story short, it's really hard to measure a brand, and it has to be part of a larger initiative.
So any measurable impacts and outcomes would be a result of how we've partnered with LEDP or LDDA or some other entity that has, that utilizes the brand to accomplish their objectives.
Well, do you want to speak to this?
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Waters, I think that there's another part, sort of answer part to this, which is, yes, I do believe that partnering with other entities around this kind of thing, especially on economic development, is the approach that makes sense for measuring what that ROI looks like in that particular slice. I think that the other piece is also for city staff, right? What we're looking at is an initial investment of time and labor to modify or switch over to a new brand identity. But once that's in place, it actually facilitates the job that folks have to do within the city. So instead of each department having to constantly reinvent materials or reinvent how they present themselves, we will have one unified set of materials and one sort of set of templates that people can work from. So there's also, I think, a quantifiable time savings and cost savings associated with staff time that goes into preparing materials for all sorts of different initiatives around the city.
So will there be, will there be a tagline that goes with this? Or will we stay with "You Belong in Longmont"? Or, I mean,
So there are a number of things that are still under discussion. We are going to be discussing key messages and looking at what the survey results show in terms of what we need to develop around messaging. At this time, we don't have specific plans to either retain or develop a new specific tagline to go with the city mark. But I think that there is room to develop messaging specific, again, to different initiatives around that. One other thing that we're also discussing is how we transition from the current mark that you see on all of your name tags and make that be more of a city seal treatment so that, you know, there is a lot of love for that mark within the community, and we want to respect that as well. And we think it has a place within a legal sort of outline to retain that as a city seal, a very legal document type of treatment, in addition to and side by side with, you know, this new brand treatment.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I want to thank both companies for very professional, very thoughtful, and hard work on this. I've spent, many years doing this sort of thing, and it is important to see, to understand the ROI on this. And it's been my experience that it is difficult to actually keep track of how much money you're saving. But if we looked at just this sheet that we have, there are like 30 different logos here. And what I've seen at, say, the University of Colorado and HarperCollins and different places that I've worked, is that you have individuals who are in charge of a department. They make up strange little titles for themselves that are very pretentious and whatnot. Then they hire their own designer. They go out and get somebody to print this up. They don't have a project manager or a designer who actually does keep track of this. So it gets to be very, very costly, but it's all kind of a hidden cost, and it's expensive, and as you can see from this, it's very confusing when people get, they look at several different websites that are supposed to be through the city, but they all look very different. They have, on our card, we have this city seal, we have the big L with the tagline, then we have some other stuff. It's not good. And this does give us more of a unified voice. And that's what Longmont needs at this point in time. And it also, it's just much less confusing for people. And once people get used to using our unified resources, they'll save a huge amount of time and effort in not having meeting after meeting after meeting to discuss some kind of logo that somebody's nephew made up. And, you know, I think this is a wonderful thing because it really will save some money and a lot of wasted time with people having meetings that are pointless to discuss things that they think are fun, but really they have work to do. And the work of designing these things and doing the analysis, which you guys have done a very good job of doing, is really needs to be with professionals, not just some guy who thinks he knows art. Anyway, so I just wanted to thank you, and thank you for explaining this. I also wanted to say to the people who are here or listening in that this was not just one thing. This has gone through many, many iterations. There were 3 big final directions, and this was chosen out of those 3 final directions, and those in themselves went through many iterations. So this was a very, very thoughtful look at Longmont's, what the town of Longmont is really like, and what the people of Longmont are really like, and I thank you.
I think the picture's cool. I think you did great. It's timeless. You got sun and water and 2 mountains, and it's modern, and I mean, all the things that I was griping about when I opened it, I was like, wow, okay, all right, my concerns are resolved. So as much as I say cool picture, well done. I like it.
I want to provide an additional answer to Councilmember Waters' question and what we touched on in terms of ROI. I think one of the things that we need to be cognizant of as a community today is when we look at economic development, many times it is anyone looking at your community, you never know when they're touching you because they are looking at you online, they are looking at you through your social media, and the more that you can have a consistent design and a consistent image for your organization in your community, that starts sending a message about the community that you're in, and that then starts transcending into how people look at you and whether they want to be part of your community, and that's a really big part. We don't know today how many people we're losing based on those, and so it does have a really direct impact on that. The more you can bring consistency of the image across an organization, there's also an organizational benefit, because when you look at it and you have multiple logos about different pieces, that also can tend to lend itself and help perpetuate disconnectedness. And so when you have a single image, it is also part about creating connection across the organization, which then helps you do some other things in terms of how you work together. You know, when you look at many corporations that have many different components of it, you see a consistent logo, and it's really attaching them back into that corporation and the broader mission. I'll tell you what I liked about this, and I was pretty vocal toward the end with Marika. People see our community as an innovative, forward-looking community. And when you look at some of the logos, and I know there's personal attachment to it and there's history, that doesn't necessarily convey the image of our community that people see and that some of these business sees. And I think this is capturing both of those. And I said, oh, we can also celebrate next slide, because you could do some fiber optics with that design that also then really keys on to how we look in terms of that innovative community. And as we think of things like STEAM and everything else that we're working on, I think there's a good tie into that. So I wanted to expand really briefly on that piece.
All right, thank you. All right, that concludes that. All right, moving on to 11B. This was put on the agenda by me to give everyone an opportunity to understand. I actually am going to move that we reconsider the Longmont City, the Longmont City Council's motion to remand the Mountain Brook preliminary subdivision plat appeal back to planning and zoning, which was voted on last time. So It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I wanted to let everyone know that I reviewed the video. Actually, I watched you guys live from Moldova and then reviewed it again twice, actually. I reviewed the administrative record and all the materials from the packet of July 9th, and I feel I can make an impartial decision. Also, I want to disclose that I was in a Veterans Housing Coalition meeting on July 15th, and that Kevin Mulshine was in attendance. It was stated at the beginning of the meeting that this meeting was only to discuss fundraising. No other things would be discussed, and that was adhered to strictly. Therefore, I believe I can make an impartial decision on this vote.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I have some things to say about this, since I was the one who brought forth this motion. And I want people to understand that I am fond of my fellow council members. These are the things that I am saying are not personal. These are things about the absolute necessity of city council being able to be viewed by the people we represent in this town as being impartial, as being fair, and as representing them, and as absolutely being ethical. We follow Robert's Rules of Order, and Robert's Rules of Order was created to create orderly and fair meetings. That means that they should be sincere. When someone asks for a reconsideration when they have never actually reconsidered it, so I would like to say that I hope I do not sound harsh when I say these things about city council members. That is not my intention. My intention is for us, this body must be perceived as being fair and as being above board. So when Mayor Bagley told us at that meeting that he was solely voting for this so that he could bring it back for reconsideration, that is not sincerely reconsideration because he'd never considered it in the first place. That is gaming the system. And I object to that. I don't think it's either orderly or fair to us and to operate that way. We could bring things back every week that way. In fact, we have been bringing things back for reconsideration more in the last year than I remember ever in the last 6 years I've served. The other matter is that we have, I appreciate what Councilman Finley said about disclosing. I have also been on the Veterans Village Board. In fact, I'd like to clarify something about the Veterans Village. This was something that Councilwoman Finley and I saw at a National League of Cities about 3 years ago, something like that. And we both thought it was a great idea because we're both fond of tiny houses in theory. Of course, we don't, either one of us want to live in one. We thought this would be a wonderful program. I was under the impression when I saw it that the veterans were actually building these homes by themselves, but that was not true. So we were talking about what a great idea this would be to have in Longmont. To have a veterans village, it would serve as an example of how to solve a problem for homeless veterans. And furthermore, it would serve as an example for maybe bringing this forth for other people who are homeless. So this was an initiative, and Councilwoman Finley took this and really ran with it, and she did an excellent job. She putting together various people. The veterans were very involved in this from the very beginning, and then when people got involved with the Veterans Village Community Project from Kansas, coming out and talking to them. This took a while, but Mr. Mulshine was interested in that, and that's a good idea. However, this was did not really originate with Mr. Mulshine, who I spoke with several years ago about this, and it didn't include either of these things that I recall. However, I do think this is a good idea. I think this is wonderful of them to donate the land for this. But this is not something that was initiated by Mr. Mulshine. This was something that was mostly initiated with Councilwoman Finley. And then a lot of people got involved in the community, the Longmont area real estate, various grant writers, the veterans, of course, and other people who are interested in it. Okay, so in terms of, to return to what I was trying to mention before, I do think that the fact that several members of council have said that they met with Mr. Mulshine. In fact, they have met with him many, many times. And I really would ask them both to recuse themselves from this vote, because I think this really casts a bad light upon us, particularly when an election is coming up in less than 3 months. Okay, that's my piece. I am not going to withdraw my motion. I am not going to be voting in favor of the reconsideration. And I don't think this is a genuine reconsideration. And I do think that several members of City Council should recuse themselves.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I would like our city attorney to address something that one of the members of the public said, that we are not allowed to bring this back for reconsideration per our code.
Sure thing, Councilmember Peck. It's Eugene May, City Attorney. So that was Mr. Thompson, and he was referencing Longmont Municipal Code 15.02040K12A. And the title of that section is Appeal of Final Actions and Decisions by the City Council. And so that provision applies where a third party wants to challenge and appeal a decision of the City Council, and the provision says you can do that only to a Colorado court of competent jurisdiction. That is not what is going on here. What is going on here is an internal procedural vote to reconsider, and that would be governed by the City Council Rules of Procedure. And in the council communication, we relayed the information that Council Rule of Procedure 19 applies for motions for reconsideration. These are parliamentary rules that govern this body. And it provides that any question can be subject to a motion to reconsider at the next meeting, or at the same meeting, or the next meeting at which final action could be taken. Since this was the July 9th meeting, this is the next meeting by which final action could be taken. I think there was confusion about sort of the external appeal of the City Council action versus internal parliamentary procedure. The City Council Rule of Procedure parallels the Robert Rules pertaining to motions for reconsideration and are consistent.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. First of all, I am one of the people who was asked to recuse myself. I will not do that. The reason is that I think the criterion for someone needing to recuse themselves in a quasi-judicial matter like this is having received ex parte information about the appeal itself. I have not done that. I disclosed previously that I was in a meeting with Mr. Mulshine when the email announcing the appeal went to council members. So I could not have known about that, about the appeal during that meeting because I was not accessing the internet at that time. And we did not discuss the, any of the matters of homeowners' objections in the neighborhood. So we did not discuss anything that was relevant to the appeal. We talked about things like the sculptures that Mr. Mulshine was planning to put in the subdivision. And we talked about the Veterans Village and how its fundraising efforts are coming along. But we did not talk about Rogers Road at all. So I have no reason to recuse myself. I want to say that I am going to be voting in favor of reconsidering and hoping for another outcome from the quasi-judicial proceedings. And the reason for that is that I was frankly shocked that there would be a motion to remand to the Planning and Zoning Committee because in the same piece of the Longmont Municipal Code that Mr. May just cited, this is instead of K-12, it's K-2. Let's see. No, it's not K-2. It's 9, K9. And it says the permissible grounds for appeal from a decision by the P&Z shall be limited to the following allegations. The decision is not supported by any competent evidence in the record. That is, that the Planning and Zoning Board just didn't look at something that they needed to look at. The decision is plainly inconsistent with the review criteria, and the decision maker exceeded its authority as contained in the municipal code or charter. And in the hearing, I didn't hear any of those criteria met. In fact, I didn't hear anything close to that. I heard people living in the neighborhood saying, I don't like this. I heard them saying, I heard them making unsupported assertions that something was going to happen without any evidence that it would. And I heard them making assertions about omissions in the process that in fact I knew to be false. I cannot see how anyone would have, understanding the rules properly, been able to make the motion that was made, and I believe that that is sufficient reason to reconsider, because I think the council made an error. That's why I am going to vote for the motion to reconsider and hoping for another outcome.
Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. As one of those who's been asked to recuse myself, I do wonder, would anybody asking me to recuse myself if I'd voted differently on this issue? This is just a question. But in the interest of transparent, honest, and open government, I disclosed a meeting I was in which the actual topic of that meeting, the reason to meet, was to solicit input on the SES from a developer perspective. So it had nothing to do with the Rogers Road project. The disclosure satisfies an ethical standard, which I'm obligated to meet and believe I've met. If I chose to recuse myself on this vote, it wouldn't be because there's an ethical concern. It would be because members of this council or a member of the public doesn't like the way I voted. So if I chose to recuse myself because somebody doesn't like the way I voted on this, I'd be recusing myself on every vote that somebody doesn't like the way I voted. Because then it's not about an ethical standard, it's about not liking the way I voted. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cast my vote when it comes time to vote based on what I think to be the evidence that was presented in the appeal hearing. And I'll just go back to I won't repeat the comments that Councilmember Martin made, but I share the concerns about the difference between somebody having an opinion, which everybody's entitled to, and somebody having evidence, right? Or a case that evidence wasn't used by the Planning and Zoning Committee. But I'm going to make some reflections on the concept of fairness, because I think fairness needs to apply on all counts and to all the parties involved in this. Certainly, the appellants need us to listen, and I heard tonight from the appellants that some of us listened. What wasn't said is maybe some of us didn't, because we voted a different way. Those who listened were identified as those who agreed. So I've been in a position before where, having been accused of not listening because I don't agree with someone, when I can recite case in point, I can make their case and disagree with it. I think I can make the case that we heard from the appellants based on what I heard in terms of their opinions or their assertions. But it doesn't rise to this, because I can repeat it, doesn't mean I agree with it, and I don't think it rises to the standard that was set forth in this case by our city attorney. So I think in fairness to all the parties involved, we have to listen well, we need to listen well. But I also think there's a concept of fairness when it comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've appointed a group of people. They applied their best efforts based on all that was presented by developers, all that was presented by the residents, and all that was presented by our staff. And for us to sit here and without providing sufficient guidance, we sent back 4 topics with no guidance, right? It's specifically, what would we expect them to do? They applied the standard that we have set forth in our process, in our materials, with no guidance. If I was a member of Planning and Zoning, I would be clueless where to start with what this council voted 2 weeks ago to send back to them. So in fairness to the Planning and Zoning Commission, I would think that if we're going to do that, we ought to be much more specific in fairness to them. I think the concept of fairness applies to the staff. They worked the process, brought their best work, the highest standards. 11 conditions were used. This was a conditional approval. 11 conditions have to be satisfied before the first permit is issued for a home. If the conditions aren't satisfied, nothing gets built. I've heard members of this council express concerns about staff leaving. I heard it in reference to the assistant city manager who just took a new job. And that we need to make certain we do what we can to hang on to staff. If we want to hang on to staff, we need to recognize when they bring their best work, and we simply overrule it because we think we have a better idea without any specific guidance or response to offer. That's not fair, in my view. So I'm going to support the motion to reconsider, and I'm going to look forward to what the next motion is.
I was going to call the question, but we have a full queue. Let's go ahead. Mayor Pro Tem.
I believe that when we discussed this at length several weeks ago, we did refer to the 11 the 11 conditions that Planning and Zoning put on this, which we did recognize were a very large number of conditions outstanding that the Planning and Zoning Department themselves had questions about so many different conditions. We also looked through, or at least I did go through the 5 review criteria, although as a council we didn't really have much of a discussion about that. But with all these 5 review criteria, which are pretty clear, there are enough questions that this should be considered again a little more carefully before it just moves forward. I do believe that there are some interesting things that came out tonight that we were not supposed to listen to because it's not a hearing. But I wish that we had heard some of those things last time we talked about it. However, we're not supposed to consider that because this is not a hearing. However, I think if you go back and listen to the review criteria that we went through, it doesn't meet the review criteria, not all of them, or not most of them, and in my view. I think that is very clear from not only what the people adjacent who live on Rogers Road have said, but also from what some of the people on the Planning and Zoning Board said themselves.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I want to make it clear that absolutely no one who talked about this development is anti the development, anti Habitat for Humanity, or the Veterans Village. The issue is Rogers Road. And I voted to send it back to Planning and Zoning because when I asked for a transportation update, I wasn't pleased with the answer that I got from staff. So to your point, Councilman Waters, when you say they do their best work, I don't doubt that, but when you ask what that best work is, I want an answer. So before wasn't happy with the consideration to bring it back because that, again, put a gag order on us so that we couldn't go talk to anyone. But before I knew that, I did go to Don Perchette to ask about, are there really any plans for Rogers Road? Because I did not get that answered when that came up 2 weeks ago. Basically, what I was told was that, yeah, we have a 5-year plan. What is it? What is your plan? This is part of what the appeal was about. So because I was able to talk to the planning department about Rogers Road, I'm going to ask them to come up and tell us this time exactly what the plans are for that Rogers Road, if there are any, and what have we been discussing. So because I got my answer, I will be voting for this, for reconsideration.
All right, I'm actually just going to point out that before we do that, if we ask questions of staff, right? I mean, on this one, reconsideration. Yeah, I guess, Eugene, if we ask questions of staff, don't we have to have appellate rebuttal? We have to have developer rebuttal. We have to have staff rebuttal, all that kind of stuff? Or no?
Mayor and council, that's correct. If the motion to reconsider is successful, I was going to give a little bit of description of some standards and guidelines that I think you guys should be aware of. But that would apply after, as you were stating, the motion to reconsider. But correct, the code provides for city council may augment the record, but then they need to provide the parties an opportunity for rebuttal. That would be applicant, appellant, and staff.
So I guess let's just hold off on, let's just wait on getting anyone to come up and give information. If you've had your question answered, let's wait and see if other council members have that same question, because if we get information from staff, it's going to open up a whole can of worms for us. You like worms? I like worms too. Councilmember Rodriguez. Oh, by the way, point of order. You have been officially dethroned, my friend. Dethroned. Councilmember Martin, your glasses and your outfit are awesome. Aaron, you got to up your game with those glasses, bro. Sorry. All right, Councilmember Rodriguez.
That was a big eye roll for the record. Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I just want to make it known that in our last vote, while Mayor Pro Tem's motion was larger in scope and scale than my concern, because I have one very specific concern, which I won't go into right now because it's not pertinent to this particular vote. But I did have one very specific concern that I could point to in both in all the criteria where I was feeling that maybe the Planning and Zoning Commission might have missed one particular piece in an extremely large project with lots of moving pieces. And so that's why I voted the way I did in the past meeting. And as such, I will probably vote for reconsideration and voice mine as a motion at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I, of course, will vote for reconsideration because I wasn't here last time. And everyone knew, I had notified everyone of my vacation dates well before this was scheduled, and it was still scheduled when I was going to be gone. This concerned me at the time, but I thought, well, we'll just go forward and hopefully, you know, I couldn't possibly see any problem with it going forward. Really relied on my council members to do the right thing, and I don't think they did. I think part of the problem, I don't think they had any ill intent, but I do believe they don't understand the process. This was a decision on a preliminary plat. It had all those conditions. Not a house would be built until those conditions were met. All those conditions were the same concerns that you had. The traffic, the drainage, the wildlife, all those things are conditions. None of that's going to happen, not a house to be built, until those conditions are met. I really think that in the future, we should have a boot camp for our new council members so they understand the development process. Anyway, I will be voting for the motion.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just since part of our discussion is substantiating evidence, I'd like to give a piece of substantiating evidence that the reason given by Councilmember Peck for voting to remand is in fact not one of the permissible grounds for doing so. And we need, absolutely, we need to follow the process as it's been designed. It's not a process in which we are rethinking as lay people in this subject matter the decision of the Planning and Zoning Board. Well, I've already said I'm going to vote for the motion to reconsider, but I think it's important to be sure that we follow the process as it was designed. Thanks.
All right, those people left in the queue have already spoken at least twice, but I just wanted to say I've been on the city council since 2011, and I've seen councils that have voted without understanding that votes are not personal. And I'm very proud of this council because we might not always agree, and we might have some personality conflicts, but I honestly believe, Mayor Pro Tem, going back to what you said, you know, it's not personal. I've been on the losing side of votes. I've been on the winning sides of votes of this particular council. And you win some, you lose some, and I just want to say how much I appreciate serving with all of you. The other thing is that I wanted to say is that Mayor Pro Tem, you are right. You are dead on when you say that I'm gaming the system. As an attorney and as a politician, I don't. I mean, I guess I do sometimes make the rules, but that's why it's so important that we understand well the laws we make, because people like me are going to come along and I will use them to get what I want. And so we need to we have to be very, very careful when we move forward on things. So let's go ahead and vote on the motion to reconsider. A yes vote is to reconsider, a no vote is to not reconsider. All right, that passes 6-1 with Mayor Pro Tem against. All right, let's move on to the next item of business. The possible final action regarding the appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission decision on the Mountain Brook preliminary subdivision plat. Councilman Martin. Oh, sorry, Eugene? Let's give you some time.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank
But
you,
you're still in
Mayor.
the queue, council member.
So with the successful adoption of the motion to reconsider, we are now transported in time to the point right before when the vote was taken on the motion to remand. So the motion to remand is pending. We are back in a quasi-judicial setting. When the mayor informed me of his intent to make the motion to reconsider, I advised council, since there was this prospect of being back in a quasi-judicial proceeding, to continue to observe all the rules related to ex parte communications. And also, as the mayor stated before, to make sure that you are deciding the preliminary plat appeal on the evidence presented at the hearing. It's kind of harsh to the public, but that public invite to be heard was not part of the hearing. The hearing happened on July 9th, and that is the information by which you should be deciding this appeal. We also talked about augmenting the record. If council were to ask staff questions, that would be augmenting the record with additional evidence. That would kick in the rebuttal rule for the appellant, applicant, and staff. And we already discussed that. So with those guidelines, you do have a motion pending on the motion to remand and a vote on that, unless it's withdrawn, and then you can move forward on additional motions.
So we have a motion pending for what? Oh, remand. All right. So we're back at we have a motion on the table to remand to remand the Mountain Brook subdivision preliminary plat, planning and zoning, to revisit based on, I don't remember the criteria. Can someone remind me? Could you hand those to me? Could you remind me what they are, Mayor Pro Tem? Which one? Right, yeah, but we actually listed specifically the airport issue, the traffic issue, the drainage issue, and wildlife issue. So those were the 4 issues that we remanded on. So let's go ahead, and Councilmember Rodriguez, do you have something to say, or are you waiting till after this vote? All right, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. So I don't feel that because of kind of the speed at which we went in the last time that I maybe adequately expressed myself on my support for the remand decision. Mine specifically comes from item 2, which we went 3-3 and split that vote for. The decision is plainly inconsistent with the review criteria shown by clear and convincing evidence. So that particular review criteria for me was the application proposes development compatible with surrounding properties in terms of land use, site and building layout and design, and access. Access is the specific one for me, where we're looking at 3 specific feeder streets emptying onto Rogers Road, where there were historically none, and also historically residential properties adjacent to where these feeder streets will go out. And so I don't feel that adding 3 feeder streets within approximately half mile is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. That's specifically my issue. Mine does not extend so far as the airport rating on the drainage study or traffic issues. Thank you.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. And my vote was for the criteria number 2. The application complies with applicable city standards, including for street and utility design and layout. I did not get an answer for the street design and layout as far as Rogers Road went. So that is why, so I think that this was based on lack of evidence. I only got the evidence from the developer as to the layout of the internal road system, but not from the city as to what their plan and design for the road was.
All right, there's nobody left in the in the queue. Let's go ahead and Mayor Pro Tem.
Of the 5 criteria, I don't think it meets 1, 3, 4, and 5. I specifically do not feel that it, once again, we are asked to approve a concept plan that is going to change drastically. I have questions about the affordable housing element of it, which is all kind of clustered in one place, and possibly this is being built in phases, and we're told that the last phase will be where most of the affordable housing will be. There are many things that I do not think have been addressed, and but specifically number 4, the application will not adversely affect surrounding properties, the natural environment, existing or planned city transportation or utility services or facilities, or the adverse impacts of the use will be mitigated to the maximum extent feasible. I do believe that they are going to try to do this, but I haven't seen convincing evidence that these things are really being addressed, and that the issues that the residents along Rogers Road have asked have been addressed to them.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. When we annex this property, the concept plan looks almost exactly like the plan that we've got before us today. It did not change drastically. It actually didn't really change much at all. The time, that is the guiding document for this development. It didn't change from annexation. So to say that it did is simply not correct.
Dr. Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Begley. So let me just ask a question of Eugene here. If I make reference to evidence we saw 2 weeks ago, not asking for anybody to come to the podium, but asking other council members for their interpretation of what we saw, does that invite rebuttal?
Mayor and council members can debate the evidence that was presented July 9th, and that is not augmenting the record with additional evidence. That would just be discussion amongst the quasi-judicial decision makers.
All right. So I was just scrolling through the materials that we received, and it may be there, and I'm not seeing it. We saw the plan for all the surface streets presented to us, and the comment. And I'd have to look at the data, but I'm guessing if I were to go back to traffic studies, I could find the validation of the statement that went along with the overview we saw 2 weeks ago. The statement was that once built, this will take traffic off of Rogers Road, not put traffic on to Rogers Road. I think to quote the statement was the quickest way to reduce traffic on Rogers Road would be to get this project done. So given the fact that part of the concern is transportation, is that you don't believe that, or you found that in error, or there's some other evidence that would overwhelm or be more persuasive than what we heard and saw?
I think you spoke. Yeah, I think you spoke twice, but I don't remember exactly. So go ahead. I'll give you the benefit. Go ahead.
So, Councilman Waters, correct me if I'm wrong, but that determination that it would actually reduce traffic on Rogers Road came from the developer's transportation advisor or consultant. We usually have evidence from the city's side telling us how much transportation is on that road now, and would the added transportation actually affect it or not. And that was the part that I didn't get. I didn't get that evidence from the city, and maybe I am misinterpreting it. But when we got it from the developer, it was 7,000 trips a day, if I remember correctly. 3,500. Well, that's only if they go one way. If they come home, it'll be 7,000. So that was what I was looking for, that evidence that it would actually not increase the traffic on Rogers Road from our city staff. We only got it from the developer's side. And I think that the city, in planning our street system, should be able to give us evidence that corroborates the transportation consultant on the developer's side.
All right, there's nobody left in here, and just chiming in on that issue, we did have a traffic study. I mean, that question, back when it was almost 2 years ago, we did have there was a big question when we were going to annex in, and I remember that many prominent figures in the community expressed, including those of us on council, or not me, but others on council, which was fine. It was great. They raised the question, what's going to happen in Southwest Longmont? Why are we building so much? What's going to happen to the traffic congestion? The staff prepared a traffic study, came back, talked about Nelson Airport, talked about Ken Pratt, talked about traffic signals, what's going to go and what are they going to do and how are they going to fix it. Rogers Road was not included, and then what I heard in the presentation was this subdivision is not going to impact Rogers Road other than, during peak hours, one car every 60 seconds. And you're not going to jump up and answer because we're not going to have rebuttal. I see him, but good for you leaning forward, getting in the fight, big dog. Look at you go. Go, man. So anyway, there's nobody in the queue. Let's vote. A yes vote is to remand it to P&Z with those 4 issues to be ironed out. A no vote is not to remand it to P&Z, and we will have another motion. Or not. Oh. Do you want to change your vote? All right. So that failed 5-2 with Councilmember Rodriguez and Mayor Pro Tem for the remanding to planning and zoning. Okay. So could we get the queue cleared, please? Councilmember Martin?
I move to accept the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. No one is in the queue. Let's vote.
Mayor.
Yep.
Staff provided in council a resolution to uphold the P&Z's decision. If that is the desire of council, I would recommend that you make the motion to adopt Resolution A from the July 9th.
Councilmember Martin.
I'll amend my motion according to the suggested wording to adopt Resolution A.
Councilmember Finley? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Nobody's in the queue. Let's vote. And that passes 5-2 with Councilmember Rodriguez and Mayor Pro Tem Christensen against. All right. And thus endeth that issue until next motion to reconsider. All right. Let's go on to, hey, look at that. Final call, public invited to be heard. Who would like to stand up and say something? All right, great. I like those. Hey, guys, guess what? It's 9:45 on a Tuesday. This is great. I wasn't going to say anything, but one of my kids broke his arm about an hour and a half ago. I got to the hospital. But I don't want to. No, that's all right. That's literally all I was thinking is, so many times it's like, council, yeah, we don't get paid enough. All right. And by the way, I'm only against the motion before because the extra $200 a month ain't going to be enough either. But anyway, mayor and council comments. Councilmember, we're going to go here. Councilmember Rodriguez, you're not in. Do you want to say something? No? All right. Let's go with Councilmember Peck.
Hooray. Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I want to make a comment about the recent conversation that I've seen on Channel 7, Channel 9, in the Denver Post, that RTD has pushed back our Northwest Corridor to 2050. I want to clarify that. The 2050 date that has been set is the total planning period that RTD is using, just like we plan out for 20 years or 30 years. That is their forecast planning period. Within that planning period, we can do any of those projects. So it has been misinterpreted that we are not going to have the Northwest Corridor until 2050. And as a matter of fact, we are looking at, with staff and RTD directors, different out-of-the-box thinking for our peak service. The 2050 deadline that RTD has been saying is for the full build-out of the Northwest Corridor, which is 55 trains a day, double-tracked, because that's what's in the NAM study. What they aren't addressing is the peak service. Channel 9 didn't mention it, Channel 7 didn't mention it, and it's frustrating to me because they use anything that will get them ratings and infuriate people. So if you read through it, you will see that it is nothing more than a planning period. And I want to thank Mayor Bagley for his fight, I guess.
I'm feisty.
You're feisty, for supporting the peak service and pushing back very, very hard on RTD. Our staff and Mayor Bagley, Judy Lubauer, our director, and myself have been working on this so hard that it's frustrating that it is RTD that is putting out an incorrect message. So I just wanted to get that out there for whoever is listening.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I want to thank Michael Belmont for a great song, and for coming to sing it. I wanted to mention that last weekend, I wish I had known this several weeks ago, but there was a Peruvian festival and a huge soccer match. There was terrific food, wonderful singing, and wonderful dancing, and it was a great day. It was, this is something that everybody should hear more about. On the other hand, the parking lot was packed. I had to drive around for 10 minutes to find parking. It was a very nice day and a very nice group of people, and it's something really pretty unique to Longmont, and it was terrific to see everybody out there. It's really not just for Peruvians. It's in celebration of all Latino culture, but it was really a very nice day. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'll try to keep this short. I first want to say, give a shout out to the Longmont Observer. Councilmember Peck had a very nice explanatory article about what she was just talking about today, that I hope everyone will take a look at and understand where the pressure needs to be applied to RTD and what to be upset about and what not to be upset about. And also, as a segue into the discussion we had in public, invited to be heard, number one, about the climate emergency, the Longmont Observer is running a lot of informative material that I have something to do with, but also some of our state level representatives have a lot to do with too, about the situation with the climate laws that the legislature passed in the 2019 session, and the extent of the emergency and the extent of what Colorado has to do to comply with the emergency. And so I recommend taking a look at those things too. What I wanted to say, other than just to commend the people who are working here in Longmont to get us to work harder on mobilizing as a city to not contribute to the problem of climate change and to mitigate the problem of climate change insofar as we can in our local area, is we often hear the argument made, well, that there's no point in us doing this in our small way because the whole rest of the world isn't doing their thing. And that was used way back in the time of the Kyoto agreement that, well, the rest of the world isn't going to do their thing, so we shouldn't do our thing. It's being said now. It's being said about the United States since our president has tried to pull us out, although he has not done so yet because of how cleverly the agreement was worded. But the fact is that no matter what the great organizations, the nations, the states, the World Health Organization, no matter what kind of resolutions and mandates that those organizations, entities put together and state, there are only two functional kinds of organizations that actually get it done in terms of implementing something. And those are corporations like our very own Smuckers, who has independently decided that they are going to be a green company and use green practices in their businesses going forward, and municipalities, cities, because we're the ones who are stuck with carrying it out, whether it is having and incenting our businesses to put charging stations in, putting charging stations in ourselves, putting electric vehicles in our business fleet, making ordinances against adding natural gas lines to new developments, pushing our generation utility to transition to renewable energy faster, which we have done. So it is absolutely appropriate and necessary for cities like us to make resolutions and firm our resolve to get this done, because us doing it is the only way it's going to get done.
Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. First of all, I want to say welcome to Mark Solomon. You belong in Longmont. Thank you for coming.
Get
We're
out of your
so
car.
glad you're here. I also want to update council on our 529 Jump program. This is our program that we voted to give seed money to match donations that parents make to kindergartners' college invest accounts. That is happening. That is happening next month. Those the school district has embraced it, and kindergarten classes in Title I schools will be the first ones where we'll go to and set up those accounts for those parents and make those matching donations up to $50. What I want everybody to know is if you go to 529jump.org, you can be part of showing our kindergartners that they matter to us in Longmont. You can donate to this and help us fund those college accounts for all our kindergartners. So go to 529jump.org and donate today.
All right. City Manager? Eugene, anything?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, we're adjourned. Absolutely. I heard your dress is stunning.